All right, so my name is Bill Hitte. I'm a business consultant with a program that's called the Small Business Development Center Network. We're actually hosted by the College of Southern Maryland down here, so I'm actually a CSM employee. The SBDC program is a national program that was set up about 40 years ago by Congress. So when the Congress set up the program, there were three main caveats that were put into the program. One is that all of our business consulting had to be no cost. The second was all of our business consulting had to be confidential. And the third one was that for every federal dollar that gets put into the program, that dollar has to be matched locally. So the SBDC program was assigned to be under the Small Business Administration. So the SBDC network program is a line item in the SBA's annual budget. They have contracts with every state, some with other. Basically, they're with higher institutions, education, higher institution organizations in those states. And University in Maryland, University of Maryland at College Park actually has the contract to run the program in Maryland with the SBA. However, University of Maryland says, hey, we're really good with the Baltimore-Washington corridor, but we don't really have a whole lot of connections elsewhere. So they subcontract out to College of Southern Maryland. I've been with the program here for 23 years. They've had the program here for almost 30 years now in Southern Maryland. Salisbury University handles the Eastern Shore. Frostburg handles Western Maryland. University of Maryland at College Park handles basically everything that touches BW Parkway and I-95. And then Carroll Community College hosts the area, a little squirrely area that's north of Baltimore that bounces off of Pennsylvania and Delaware. So pretty well spread out. There are about 40 of us right now that are business consultants. I'm the primary business consultant for Charles County, but actually, because I've been doing this for so long, I actually have clients in about 7 different counties right now. My background came out of banking and doing this stuff, and I'll explain to you a little bit more about sort of what's happening. But just because my background, I'm on our statewide finance specialist team, and so I interact with consultants across the state on financing deals. So we don't have money. That's not our shtick. But what we do is we help prepare people and have them help figure out what they need, where they need to be, what kind of structure might make sense, just so we can talk in plain English to them and provide insights that a lender isn't necessarily going to provide. So, it's not really the lender's role to tell you how to do stuff. It's your lender's role to help you figure out how to get money if they're interested in doing a deal. So right now, I will tell you, since we talked last May, it was in May was the last time I was on here. A lot of things have changed since May. I'm sure you guys know of a few little things called interest rates that probably have changed that impact you. And I'm going to walk you with a little bit of background in a minute. But primarily what I'm seeing right now, similar to the way it was back in May, is still getting 2 or 3 calls a week from people who either want to buy businesses or sell businesses. I'm at the tail end of the baby boomers. So there are a lot of people who want to transition out of their businesses. Some people want to be able to go in and buy existing businesses. So that's really a hot topic. Been some changes with the SBA on how they view some of those things. I'll touch base on that real quickly. But still seeing that. The good thing for you, theoretically, is our volume is crazy. Just give you an example, in fiscal year ended June 30th of 22, I saw about 300 folks that I work with. In a normal year, I was in the 200 range. Fiscal year ended June of 23, I actually work with 385. So I'm almost double my volume for what I had 2 years ago. So just so you can tell. The other thing that's good for you actually is there's been more of an uptick in people wanting to utilize retail store areas. It's a combination of what they want to try to do. I'm not going to say that 50% of them are realistic, but it's very different uses, and you're seeing that too, I'm sure, for what was done pre-COVID versus what people are trying to do. It's almost becoming a destination or an event type thing. So there's all things with animals, things with all these other different variety of stuff that we really hadn't seen a whole lot of. So just to give you some perspective, at least that's where it's going, but I'll talk a little bit more about that also. So what I want to do is I want to go back and follow up with two things that we talked about in May. One thing was what was called the State of Maryland's SSBCI program. That was federal funds that came out of ARCA, American Recovery Act. And basically those monies were assigned to states for small business initiatives to help, quote unquote, recover from economic changes that happened during COVID. So the state of Maryland contracted with a company called Lendistry to run those programs for them. We've been referring people to Lendistry for those programs. However, we really don't get much feedback, so I can't tell you how they're working or not. Unfortunately, about 2/3 of the clients that do stuff, they don't follow up with us to let us know what they're doing. They sort of get the service and then they move on to something else. But we don't even have access to find out from the state of Maryland what's happening with those funds or any of that stuff. So that's an update, and that's one of the challenges that we have ongoing. The other, sorry, oh man, that's not good. The other challenge that was facing, and we talked a little bit about the doom loop in San Francisco. We talked about the vacancies in the cities. There's a double-edged sword on that, but one thing I want to tell you was sort of interesting. One of the county or city aldermen, I guess, for San Francisco decided that they were going to try to take advantage of a tour, and they called it, they tried to sell it for $30 a head to coordinate a tour of the doom loop to be able to have people look at vacant properties. They had one person sign up. So that gave, it was like, it was an embarrassment, a big crash and burn because they had all this marketing promotion. That in combination with the lack of walkability stuff and people going back to their offices in those towns, in those cities, is the opposite thing is all these smash and grab and all these group, theft things that are going on, especially in the cities. CVS has closed numerous facilities in several cities. Several of them are on the board just quite simply because they are reacting to this crime wave. There's one CVS in the District of Columbia, which has gotten rid of everything on their shelves within 15 feet of the entrance. So those spaces are now empty. So just because people were coming in and grabbing stuff and taking off, and a lot of the more valuable stuff that thieves seem to go after, they're moving to the further part back of the store. So, that's an issue from the retail standpoint. But I referred to interest rates going up since the last time we got together. But I want to take a little walk back in time with everybody. Leonard might remember this, but I'm not sure if anybody else on this call is gonna know. But the current prime rate, which is supposedly the rate that you give to your best customers from the bank, the U.S. prime rate right now is at 8.5%. The 30-year U.S. Treasury notes right now, or Treasury bonds, are at 4.96%. What I want to share with you is I started in banking on July 14th of 1980. All right, so a long time ago. Yeah, I'm old, but just so you know, prime rate in July of 1980 was 12.5. By October of 1980, prime rate was 14.5.
I was processing mortgages back then. Try to give somebody a truth in lending disclosure when you're showing them like the real cost of your money when that's what the rates are.
Well, let me give you the next one. In January of 1981, prime reached its peak at that time of 20.5%. Okay, so I know Nicole Becker laughing, saying, "Oh my heavens." So here's Bill coming out of college, who's working in a bank, and I'm trying to do loans, and I'm telling people their loans are going to be at 24%. So nothing really happens. What I also want to give you some interesting tidbit. Hang on one second. Not directly related to what you all do, but this is just something that I heard about last week, which was really interesting. Subprime auto loans, which are the auto loans, consumer auto loans that are to people with not really strong credit. So obviously those are always higher interest rates, but they represent about 14% of all consumer vehicle loans that are on the books right now, 14% in dollars, not in number. So the interesting part about this is that these subprime loans that were 30 days or more delinquent, in May of 2021, it was 2.6%. Normally, you're looking at, for regular auto loans, you're looking at the 1.5% range. So when you're into these more riskier things, 2.6 is pretty much in line with historical type of references for these type of products. In September of 2023, we hit a historic record of 6.1% delinquencies. That surpassed the previous record of 6% in October of 96, and then 5.9% in August of 2019. It was interesting when I went back and looked at that. The October of 96, I sort of understand there was a lot of things happening out there in the third summer of 96 economically with stuff. But the August of 2019 was sort of interesting because we were coming out of some changes, and again there were some challenges with people's credit. So just sort of interesting. So again, you get some relative terms of where interest rates were, where they are, and then some trends as far as auto loans, at least the subprime. The other two things that I want to talk about very quickly, giving some examples, Equifax data does what they call default rates. And when they go through and they do these default estimates, they track information that comes off of bank reports that go to the Federal Reserve and all that kind of other stuff. And they track it by industry and then across the board for small businesses. So what they also do is they take the trends, and Equifax goes in and projects what they think year end would be. So this was really interesting because when I went through, they only do it like quarterly. So I don't have the current one isn't done yet. That won't be out for another couple of weeks. But I wanted to give you some perspective as to the difference between what I just talked about with subprime loans and sort of the prime rate and what's happening, in lending to a couple of selected industries of what happened between the end of 22 and what happened in estimates in January and what happened in estimates in July for 2023. So I'm going to read these to you and just sort of get a feel for it. Accommodation food service, which is a big, broad industry, in 2023, the default rates were 2.4%. That's fairly normal. Okay. However, in January of 23, they projected that the 23 default rate would be 4.5. By July, they actually reduced that to 4%. So they were assuming that things were going to get better. Now, we didn't see all the impacts of the interest rate adjustments yet. Construction trades, 2022 was 2.2%. 3.8 was what was projected for 23 in January. In July, 3.2. The one that really took a hit that we saw going on, and I'm seeing this with a lot of the clients because of the number of inquiries, transportation. Transportation services in 22 was 2.4%. The projected for 2023 in January was 5.2%, but the July revised is 6.3. So part of the reason for that is that everybody and everybody's brother wants to do delivery services now. So I get a call. I usually get 3 to 4 calls a week from people that want to buy delivery trucks, and they think they can get a contract with Amazon tomorrow and start delivering stuff. Well, Amazon's getting 15 calls a day from people that have pickups and 26-foot box trucks who want to do work for them, non-seasonal. It's going to be a little different here coming up in a couple of weeks. But the ongoing effect of that is obviously the pay or the contracted rate is going down because they're getting all these inquiries. So what happens as soon as that happens, that's a trickle down effect to all these people that have all these vehicles, and you're only using 2 out of 4, all right? Because Joe next door started offering them, and he's cutting the rate just to be able to get the service. So it's just pretty interesting. So the other one that I would share with you, which would be more directly relevant to you guys, these two, retail. 2022 was 1.7%. They projected 3.3 for 23 in January. The revised is 2.9. So that's a good thing. Real estate also was 1.7 in 2022. They projected 3.5 in January. However, in July, they revised that all the way down to 2.6. So that's a good thing from the standpoint of real estate. A lot of things, different things that are happening out there, but at least that default rate projection is down. It'll be interesting to sort of see because, you have some of these folks that are on rate adjustments, and we'll see how the cash flow works out. And you understand that as well as I do. So to make sure that, all these projections that were done 4 or 5 years ago, pre-COVID, that we're looking at 4 or 5% interest rates, now you're looking at 10. So, a lot of these places are in double. So just to give you an interesting stat. So the last stat that I will give you is overall small business loans that are past due 30 to 90 days right now. Again, this is from Equifax data. In December of 22, it was 1.4%. Currently, it's 1.7. So we're seeing a little bit of an uptick. It's still within a range of what I told you, sort of like that 1.6 range is pretty typical, but it is an uptick and it's been going up. It flattened out a little bit, but it's still something that's a trend out there. So, again, what I'm seeing are people who are interested in the retail storefronts. Unfortunately, a third of them don't have any money. So that's always a challenge for you all, as well as for us as business consultants. But, some of them have pretty good ideas. So there's some other different things that we might be able to do with them. There are really no grants out there of any magnitude at this point in time. Pretty much all that has gone water under the bridge. And actually, that funding that came out of COVID, the federal, state, and local monies that came out of COVID, that really contributed to the subprime auto loan delinquency rate of being only 2.6% in May of 21, because a lot of people weren't spending money or they had money coming in. So the last thing that I want to mention is I have several clients that are getting the tax rebates, the ERTC, and from that vantage point, I've got a couple of clients who received a couple of their checks because, as you may know, they come out, they send them 4, you break it down into 4 based upon the tax quarters. So I've got several clients that have received 3 of them, but the 4th one they're waiting for, and all the communication we've seen from the IRS is they're really slowing down on those things. So the market seems to be going both ways. A little bit of an uptick with some people with some pretty cool ideas to do some things. I'm not seeing a whole lot of transactions on the really big commercial projects. I do have a couple of 504 loan program participants that I'm working with, but nothing of any major magnitude. Most of my volume is really a lot of people who don't want to go back to work, to be honest with you. They just want to start their own business. So anyhow, that's it for me. I'm more than happy to answer some questions, and I tried to stay within my time limit, Kelly.
Well, I think that's good news that, when the entrepreneurs get out there, that's when innovation happens. And so, hopefully that'll be a good thing moving forward. One question I did have for you, Bill, on our agenda today, we were talking about speakers for next year. Is there, just wondering if there was anybody specific that you would recommend? I know you come across a lot of different people and we always value your perspective. Is there anybody specifically that you think would be, a good relationship or a good resource for our committee?
Yeah, if you haven't had anybody who specializes in 504 loans on in a while, I think you would want to do that. I can certainly, Kelly, you can send me an email if that's something that you all talk about and you want to do. I can get you a couple of names. Also, probably from the standpoint, although I know you guys aren't business brokers per se, but, realistically, when people try to exit their business, a lot of times they will sell the real estate that they own, that they operate the business out of. So there's some changes on the SBA side. There are a couple of lenders who are pretty proactive with that stuff. I can usually provide some of that information. Some of that is still in the rephase. The SBA came out with a new standard operating procedure that was revised back in, actually came out in August, but now they're making revisions to the revision, quite simply because of some things that they did differently. So one of the big things that I will tell you, Lily, in a follow-up to that, is that SBA used to require business appraisals for any transaction, not financing, any transaction that was over $200,000. So now they're only asking for certified business appraisals when the loan amount is $500,000 or more. But some of the lenders still have criteria because it's very difficult to value a business, and what the assets, you can figure it out, but primarily lenders always look at cash flow. But yeah, I would say somebody from the 504 program, maybe even one of the somebody else, even maybe somebody from Farm Credit, just because you might get a little bit of ag stuff, although that doesn't necessarily mean it, but at least from your standpoint, that might be something that might be an option too.
That sounds like a good perspective. We've had somebody from PNC previously. It's been a few years back, right, Kelly? Probably been 2 or 3 years since she was here, but thanks. I appreciate that as far as what things are changing and different, things for us to be aware of.
I think, I mean, not telling you what to do, but I think you have enough of a diverse group to say, okay, throw out some ideas of some topics that you're seeing short run versus stuff you might want to be long-term educated about. And if you want to zing that to me, I can certainly connect with folks that can do that, because I use those resources all the time.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Another thing I wanted to check, and just one last, when you talk about existing businesses for sale, is there any way for us to be aware?
No.
I sure would like to help that.
You asked that question.
I know it.
Look, hey, everything that we do is confidential. We can't share it. We can't share it. Now, I can tell business owners if they're coming in once. And let me tell you, Lily, I'll be really candid with you, just so everybody understands. What'll happen is I'll get a call today from somebody that says, I want to sell my business by January. Okay? They're nowhere near ready to be able to do that. Number one, half of their cash payments that they took in aren't on their tax returns, which means their value of cash flow, which values the business, which allows somebody to buy it, okay, is low. So, I have to go through and walk through the process with them, and handhold for a little while to get them prepped. It
is a process. There's no doubt about it.
And basically what I tell them is, as soon as, and especially the cash businesses, the ones that are all really focused in on electronic transactions, really don't have a problem with. But the issue is that, when you sit down and you say, well, wait a minute, I'm looking at your tax return. That really doesn't match up with what you say your volume is. And, I've been at your business, or I know about your business. Well, I put a certain amount of cash, I'll show it on a tax return. And it's like, well, what you're going to do is you just shot yourself in the foot, because your buyer now can't get financing because you're not showing cash flow on your tax return, and it decreases the value of your business. So, and they go, well, I don't understand. Well, okay. So basically what you need to do is tell your accountant that you're going to sell your business and now you got to wait 2 years to file your tax return. So I get to see your next 2 years tax return. So basically you get into a 3-year format before they're really ready. But I do tell them, just in case, if they're going through, and even if there's some semblance of ready, even if they're 70% ready, I will tell them, you may want to reach out to other business owners who recently sold, or reach out to brokers, okay, realtors, because they may have been contacted by people who are interested in buying businesses. But I can't divulge that information to you. That's got to come from the client. Economic development people have the same issue, because they want to know a lot of stuff that we're doing. But I tell them, if I either refer them to economic development if there's something specific that they need, or if economic development has information that I don't have to be able to help them. But that's got to be a client generated thing to do that. And, I fully understand what you're trying to do, and I try to pump them to go in. But the problem is most of them aren't really that ready. And that's really the
company. And that's when I send them to you, Bill.
Yeah, and that's okay. And that's why I just tell them, okay, you have 2 choices. And for those of you who've been on a previous conversation with me, I tell the business owner, you have 2 choices. You can file amended tax returns with the IRS and tell them that you underreported your income, or you can work with the SBDC for 3 years and file proper tax returns. And then I can have you ready to be able to sell your business. Well, I'm not going to tell the IRS I underreported my income. All right, well, welcome to the SBDC for the next 3 years, because you got to file 2 years of tax returns, 2 full years of tax returns that are correct. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I just like to, sometimes when I have buyers or that are looking for things, I would much rather put them, team them up with somebody who's trying to get out of the business. It just makes it, but that is always the challenge with it, is the confidentiality. I mean, It's like, I know that economic development comes to me sometimes about it, and I'm just like, I just can't talk to you about it. I'm sorry. Y'all, they're great when it comes to getting somebody set up and going once the deal is done, but
it's always, well, we want to know what happened with this. And I mean, I had a conversation today, with somebody from economic development, and it's a situation with a business probably going to be transferred. But, it was sort of like, okay, but you gotta, I can help them, but you got to refer them to me, and they got to become an SBDC client, because I can't do anything with them until they do that. So, it's sort of like, okay, so then they got to go back. Most of them know the ropes. So, all right. I don't want to interfere on the rest of your time. So if there are any other questions, everybody's good. Everybody's happy. I'm glad. Good to hear that. That's great.
Thank you, Bill. And of course, we'll have you back, again.
And just remember, January of 1981, prime rate was 20.5. So as soon as somebody tells you, oh my God, prime rate's so high, you go, this crazy consultant told me when he was in banking, it was 20. So, yep. All right. You all take care. Kelly, I'll send you a synopsis real quick. Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. Everybody have a great business day. And thank you very much for the invite.
Have a good day, Bill.
Ready.